The summer I turned 21 marked a significant departure from my usual routine. For the first time since beginning university, I decided against returning to my childhood home during the 3-month break. My roommate Marcus had offered me an incredibly affordable rate on his spare bedroom near campus, and the opportunity to gain some independence felt too valuable to pass up. Financially supporting myself meant finding flexible employment that could accommodate my unpredictable academic schedule. Over the previous 2 years, I had cycled through various part-time positions: retail associate, restaurant server, campus library assistant, never quite finding something that felt sustainable. That changed when I discovered the world of professional house sitting. The concept seemed almost too good to be true when I first encountered it. Multiple online platforms connected homeowners with responsible individuals willing to maintain their properties during absences. The arrangement typically involved caring for pets, watering plants, collecting mail, and simply ensuring the home remained secure. In exchange, I received payment while essentially living rent-free in homes that far exceeded my modest means. Most of my clients possessed substantial wealth. Their residences featured amenities I had only seen in magazines: infinity pools, home theaters, wine cellars, expansive gardens with sophisticated irrigation systems. The pets I cared for often had more elaborate living arrangements than I did. I once house sat for a family whose 3 cats had a dedicated catio with climate control and automated feeders that dispensed precisely measured portions at scheduled intervals. The work felt less like employment and more like an extended vacation in luxury accommodations. I would complete my modest responsibilities, feeding animals, adjusting thermostats, ensuring plants received adequate hydration, and then enjoy the amenities. I studied for exams while lounging beside temperature-controlled pools, prepared meals in kitchens with restaurant-grade appliances, and slept in guest rooms larger than my entire apartment. When summer break commenced, I immediately began searching for new assignments. The 3rd listing I reviewed seemed straightforward enough. A married couple required someone to watch their home for 4 days while they visited family out of state. The compensation aligned with industry standards, and the dates worked perfectly with my schedule. I submitted my application along with references from previous satisfied clients. They responded within hours, requesting an in-person meeting to discuss expectations and provide a house tour. We scheduled the appointment for the afternoon before their departure. I input their address into my navigation system and began the drive across town. The route took me progressively farther from the developed urban center I knew well. Neighborhoods with manicured lawns and closely spaced homes gradually gave way to more rural surroundings. The roads narrowed and the properties expanded. Eventually, I found myself on a gravel road surrounded by open grassland that stretched toward distant tree lines. When I arrived at the specified address, confusion immediately set in. The home before me bore no resemblance to the upscale residences I typically serviced. This was a modest, single-story structure that appeared to have been built several decades prior. The exterior paint showed signs of weathering, and the small covered porch held a weathered wooden bench and some potted plants in various states of health. The property sat isolated in the landscape, with no neighboring homes visible in any direction. Tall prairie grass surrounded the lot, swaying rhythmically in the persistent breeze. The driveway consisted of 2 dirt tracks worn into the earth, with grass growing between them. Everything about the scene contradicted my expectations for a house-sitting assignment. I double-checked the address, confirming I had arrived at the correct location. Perhaps the couple had inherited this property, I reasoned, or they were investing in rural real estate as a weekend retreat. I parked behind their sedan and approached the front door. The couple who greeted me appeared to be in their mid-30s. Jennifer had warm eyes and an easy smile, while her husband Thomas maintained a more reserved demeanor. They welcomed me inside, and I immediately noticed the interior matched the exterior's modest character. The furnishings were simple and dated, the layout compact and efficient. This was clearly their primary residence, not a vacation property or investment holding. We settled around their small kitchen table, and Jennifer produced a handwritten list of instructions. The responsibilities seemed minimal compared to my previous assignments. They had no pets requiring care. The plant watering schedule was straightforward: a dozen houseplants and the porch containers once daily. They had already arranged for mail hold at the post office. Essentially, my primary function was simply occupying the space. "So the main thing," Thomas began, his tone carrying a weight that immediately commanded attention, "is that we'd like someone here, particularly during the nighttime hours." I waited for him to elaborate, sensing there was more to this request than simple security concerns. Jennifer interjected quickly, her words tumbling out in a rush. "It's probably nothing at all. We're almost certainly overreacting. But recently, over the past few weeks, we've noticed some unusual activity around the property after dark." "What kind of activity?" I asked, suddenly understanding why this assignment had been so readily available. Thomas exchanged a glance with his wife before continuing. "People. We've seen people in the field behind the house, just standing there watching the property. It's happened 4 or 5 times now, always after sunset." "Have you called the police?" The question seemed obvious to me. "We filed a report," Jennifer explained, her fingers nervously turning her coffee mug. "An officer came out, drove around the property, didn't see anyone. They told us to call if it happened again, but..." She trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "But what?" Pressed. "They never do anything," Thomas finished. "They just stand there in the field. They don't approach the house, don't try to enter the property, don't make threats or gestures. They just watch, and then eventually they leave." The police basically indicated that unless they attempt to trespass or commit some actual crime, there's not much they can do. The explanation did little to ease my growing concern. The scenario they described sounded deeply unsettling. Mysterious figures appearing repeatedly in the darkness to silently observe their home. Yet their demeanor remained surprisingly calm, almost dismissive of their own story. "Look," Jennifer said, reaching across the table to touch my hand reassuringly. "We truly believe it's nothing dangerous. Probably just some local kids playing pranks, or maybe hunters who cut through our property at night. The field behind us connects to much larger parcels of land. We just want someone here to keep an eye on things while we're gone. Give us peace of mind. But honestly, we think you'll have a completely uneventful few days." Their reassurances felt rehearsed, as though they were trying to convince themselves as much as me. Still, I needed the money, and 4 days seemed manageable. I had already cleared my schedule for this assignment and would lose the income if I backed out now. "If anything does happen, if you see anyone or feel unsafe in any way, you call 911 immediately," Thomas instructed firmly. "Don't hesitate, don't try to investigate yourself, just call the police, and then call us, no matter what time it is." I agreed to their terms, and we spent another 30 minutes reviewing the house systems, how to work the temperamental water heater, which circuit breaker controlled which rooms, where they kept spare batteries and flashlights. They showed me the guest bedroom where I would sleep, a small room with a window overlooking the front approach to the house. Before I left, Thomas provided me with their cell phone numbers and their destination address. "We'll be about 6 hours away," he explained, "but we'll keep our phones on at all times. Any concern at all, any question, you contact us right away." I drove back to Marcus's apartment feeling uncertain about what I had agreed to. The assignment that had seemed straightforward on paper now carried ominous undertones. That evening, I found myself researching the area around their property, looking for any news stories or information that might explain the mysterious watchers. I found nothing remarkable, just a sparsely populated rural area with scattered homes and agricultural land. The next day, I packed a bag with enough clothes and supplies for 4 days, along with my laptop and textbooks. If I was going to be isolated in the countryside, I might as well use the time productively to get ahead on some reading for my fall courses. I arrived at the house around noon, after the couple had already departed for their trip. Unlocking the front door and stepping inside felt different without their presence. The house seemed smaller somehow, more vulnerable in its isolation. I set my belongings in the guest room and spent some time familiarizing myself with the space in daylight. I walked the perimeter of the property, noting sight lines and approaches, though I wasn't entirely sure what I was looking for. The afternoon passed quietly. I watered the plants as instructed, prepared a simple lunch in their kitchen, and settled on the couch with one of my textbooks. The silence was profound in a way I wasn't accustomed to. Growing up in a suburban neighborhood and then living near a university campus meant I was conditioned to constant ambient noise, traffic, conversations, music, construction, sirens. Here, the silence was broken only by the whisper of wind through grass and the occasional bird call. As evening approached, I found my anxiety building. I checked the locks on both doors multiple times. I located the flashlights Thomas had shown me and placed one within easy reach in the living room. I positioned myself on the couch where I had sight lines to both the front and back windows. The sun set gradually, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple before fading to deep blue and finally black. The darkness out here was absolute in a way city darkness never is. No streetlights, no neighboring houses with illuminated windows, no ambient glow from commercial districts. Just pure, complete darkness pressing against the windows. I turned on lamps throughout the house, suddenly feeling exposed by the contrast between the lit interior and the dark exterior. Anyone outside could see imperfectly while I could see nothing out there. I moved through the rooms, closing all the curtains and blinds, creating a barrier between myself and whatever might be watching. The evening stretched on without incident. I made dinner, watched some television, tried to focus on reading. By 11 o'clock, my earlier anxiety had begun to feel foolish. Nothing was going to happen. The couple's concerns were overblown, probably the result of misidentifying shadows or wildlife in the darkness. I was letting their paranoia infect my own mindset. I decided to do one final check of the house before settling in for the night. I walked through each room, verifying windows were locked and curtains closed. In the kitchen, I rinsed my dinner dishes and placed them in the drying rack. I was reaching for the light switch when something made me glance toward the back door. The door had a small window at the top, and I had neglected to cover it with the curtain. Through that window, I could see into the backyard and the field beyond, illuminated faintly by the moonlight that had emerged from behind clouds. A person was standing in the field. My hand froze on the light switch. The figure was perhaps 50 yards from the house, motionless, facing toward me. Even at this distance, I could discern it was a man, tall, wearing dark clothing that made him blend partially into the night. My heart rate accelerated immediately. This was exactly what the couple had described, yet somehow the reality of it felt far more menacing than their casual description had conveyed. I remained frozen, watching the figure, hoping I was somehow mistaken, that this was a fence post or equipment I had failed to notice earlier. But then the figure shifted his weight, a subtle movement that confirmed his humanity. He was definitely watching the house. I stepped back from the door, my mind racing through options. The couple had said to call them if anything happened. I pulled out my phone and typed out a text to both Thomas and Jennifer. Someone is in the field behind the house, just standing there watching. What should I do? The response came quickly from Jennifer. We're so sorry you're dealing with this. They've never done anything harmful. If you feel unsafe, please call the police. Otherwise, just ignore them and they'll leave eventually. Her message struck me as oddly dismissive given the circumstances. I was alone in their isolated home with a stranger watching from the darkness, and their advice was to ignore it. I moved to the back window in the living room and carefully pulled the curtain aside just enough to peek out. The man was still there in the same position, but as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I realized with creeping horror that he wasn't alone. I could now distinguish at least two other figures standing in different positions across the field, all oriented toward the house. The more I looked, the more uncertain I became about the exact count. Were those shadows cast by the tall grass or additional people? I let the curtain fall back into place and backed away from the window. This was beyond strange. This was threatening. Multiple people standing in a field in the middle of the night, silently watching an isolated house? That wasn't innocent or explainable as hunters passing through. I texted the couple again. There are multiple people out there. This doesn't feel right. I think I should call the police. Thomas responded this time. That's completely your decision. We trust your judgment. We just know from experience that the police will come out, the people will disappear before they arrive, and nothing will come of it. But if it makes you feel safer, absolutely call them. His response felt like it was simultaneously giving me permission while discouraging me from actually making the call. I wrestled with the decision. I had never called 911 before and felt uncertain about what constituted a legitimate emergency. Were people standing in a field, not technically on private property, not making threats enough to justify police involvement? I decided to wait and observe. If they approached closer, if they attempted to enter the property, then I would call immediately. I checked the locks again, confirmed my phone was fully charged, and kept watch at the windows. 15 minutes later, when I looked again, the field appeared empty. The figures had vanished as silently as they had appeared. I checked from multiple windows, different angles, but saw no sign of anyone. The relief I felt was profound but incomplete. They had left, but they had also been there, and I had no explanation for why. I tried to settle my nerves and prepare for sleep, though it felt impossible. I lay in the guest bed fully clothed, my phone within reach, listening to every sound the old house made as it settled and creaked. Eventually, exhaustion overtook anxiety, and I drifted into an uneasy sleep. The following day brought sunshine and a sense of normalcy that made the previous night feel almost dreamlike. I went through my responsibilities, watering plants, tidying the house, preparing meals. Thomas and Jennifer texted to check in, and I gave them a brief update, downplaying my fear from the night before. The afternoon was pleasant. I sat on the front porch with my laptop, taking advantage of their Wi-Fi to catch up on emails and browse social media. The isolation that had felt menacing in darkness seemed peaceful in daylight. I could see for miles across the gently rolling grassland. Nothing appeared threatening or unusual. As sunset approached, however, my anxiety returned with increased intensity. The memory of those silhouettes in the field haunted me. I didn't want to experience that again. Didn't want to spend another night wondering if they would return, if their behavior might escalate. I considered leaving, simply packing my bag and driving back to Marcus's apartment, texting the couple that I couldn't complete the assignment. But pride and financial need kept me there. I had committed to 4 days, and one unsettling night shouldn't be enough to break that commitment. I tried to rationalize that perhaps the watchers had satisfied their curiosity and wouldn't return. I repeated my evening routine from the previous night, securing the house, closing all curtains, positioning myself where I could monitor approaches. I kept my phone in my hand, the emergency call screen already pulled up, ready to dial with a single touch. 8 o'clock passed, then 9, then 10. No signs of anyone outside. My tension began to ease slightly. Perhaps they had moved on to whatever strange activity occupied them elsewhere. At approximately 11:30, I stood up from the couch to stretch my legs and get water from the kitchen. I was halfway down the narrow hallway when I heard it, a soft creaking sound above my head. I stopped moving, holding my breath, listening intently. The sound came again, unmistakably the sound of weight being placed on the roof, creating stress on the wooden structure beneath the shingles. Slow, deliberate footsteps were moving across the roof surface. Terror flooded through me like ice water. Someone was on the roof, not standing in a distant field, but on the roof directly above me. The footsteps continued, tracking from what sounded like above the living room toward the front of the house, stopping roughly above where I estimated the front door to be. Then came 3 loud knocks on the front door. I jolted backward involuntarily, pressing myself against the hallway wall. My hands trembled as I raised my phone, but before I could dial, it began ringing. The sudden sound in the silent house made me gasp. The caller ID showed Thomas's number. "Hello." My voice came out barely above a whisper. "I need you to listen to me very carefully." Thomas's voice was low and controlled, but I detected an undercurrent of urgency. "Everything is going to be okay, but you need to leave the house right now. There's someone on the roof," I said, my voice shaking. "They're knocking on the door." "I can't." "Listen to me," he interrupted, his tone firm. "They are not going to hurt you. I need you to walk out the front door and get in your car and drive away. Do not pack anything. Do not delay. Just walk out right now." "I don't understand. You knew they would come back. You knew they would come to the door. What is happening?" Questions tumbled out of me even as I began moving toward the guest bedroom, thinking I could grab my bag quickly. "There's no time to explain. Please, you need to trust me. Walk out the front door, get in your car, leave. They will not harm you if you leave right now." The certainty in his voice was what frightened me most. He knew exactly what was happening. This wasn't a surprise to him. Whatever this was, Thomas and Jennifer had anticipated it, had known it might occur, and had still sent me here. The knocking came again, louder, more insistent. I could hear movement around the exterior of the house, footsteps in the gravel, the swish of movement through the grass. Multiple people were surrounding the house. "I'm scared," I admitted, tears beginning to stream down my face. "I know, and I'm sorry, but you're going to be fine. I promise you, if you walk out right now, you'll be fine. They just need us to not be here. Please, go now." The explanation made no sense, but the alternatives were running out. I couldn't hide in the house indefinitely while unknown numbers of people surrounded it. I couldn't call the police. Even if they came immediately, it would take 20 minutes or more for them to reach this remote location. My only realistic option was to do exactly what Thomas was telling me. Walk out and leave. "Okay," I said, forcing my legs to carry me down the hallway toward the front door. "Okay, I'm going. Thank you. I'm staying on the line with you." I reached the front door and placed my hand on the deadbolt. Through the small window at the top of the door, I couldn't see anyone on the porch, but I knew they were there. I took several deep breaths, trying to steady myself enough to turn the lock. The deadbolt disengaged with a loud click that seemed to echo through the silent house. I grabbed the doorknob, turned it, and pulled the door open. 2 men stood on the porch, one on each side of the doorway. They were older, perhaps in their 60s, with weathered faces and rough clothing. Their expressions were blank, emotionless, as they stared at me. Neither moved, neither spoke. "I'm leaving," I announced to them, my voice quavering. "I'm just going to my car." They remained motionless as I stepped over the threshold onto the porch. I moved between them, expecting at any moment for one of them to grab me, but they let me pass. As I descended the porch steps, I could see shapes moving in the darkness around the property. At least 3 or 4 other people, possibly more, maintaining their distance but clearly present. My car felt impossibly far away, though it was parked only 30 feet from the front door. I walked quickly, fighting the urge to run, feeling exposed and vulnerable with every step. I reached the driver's door, yanked it open, threw myself inside, and immediately locked all the doors. My hands shook so badly I struggled to get the key into the ignition. The 2 men from the porch had turned to watch me, but made no move to approach. I finally got the car started, threw it into gear, and accelerated down the driveway far faster than was safe, gravel spraying behind my tires. I didn't look back until I reached the main road. When I finally glanced in my rearview mirror, I saw several figures standing in the driveway, illuminated by my taillights, watching me disappear into the night. "I'm out," I told Thomas, who I had forgotten was still on the phone. "I'm driving away." "What the hell was that? What's happening?" There was a long pause before he responded. "I'm so sorry we put you in that situation. We hoped it wouldn't happen while you were there. You need to call the police," I insisted. "Those people broke into your house. They were on your roof, on your property." "We'll handle it," Thomas said, his tone making clear the conversation was ending. "Thank you for doing what I asked. You kept yourself safe, and that's what matters. Send me your account information, and I'll transfer payment for the full 4 days, plus a substantial bonus for the trouble." "I don't want a bonus. I want an explanation. Who were those people? Why were they at your house? What did they want? It's complicated, and it's our problem to deal with, not yours. I'm sorry, but I need to go now. Thank you again." The call ended abruptly. I immediately tried calling back, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried Jennifer's number with the same result. I tried several more times over the next 20 minutes as I drove back toward town, but neither of them answered. I spent the entire drive debating whether to call the police myself. Ultimately, I convinced myself that it wasn't my place. It was their property, their situation, and Thomas had made clear they didn't want police involvement. I rationalized that I didn't even know what crime had been committed, if any. The people had been on the property, but I had no evidence they had entered the house or stolen anything. And I had left, so I couldn't even confirm what happened after my departure. It was weak reasoning, I recognized even then, but I was traumatized and exhausted and wanted desperately to put the entire experience behind me. I went back to Marcus's apartment, took a long shower, and tried unsuccessfully to sleep. The next morning, I received a bank transfer from Thomas for significantly more money than we had originally agreed upon, enough to suggest he was paying for my silence as much as my services. I accepted it without protest. I never heard from Thomas or Jennifer again, despite several attempts to contact them in the following weeks. I drove past their property once in daylight about a month later, mostly to confirm it was real and not some elaborate nightmare. The house looked exactly as I remembered it, small, worn, isolated. Nothing appeared damaged or different. A car was parked in the driveway, suggesting someone was home, but I didn't stop. Years have passed since that night. I've turned it over in my mind countless times, constructing and discarding theories. Were Thomas and Jennifer involved in something criminal? Were the people in the field former associates, rivals, or victims seeking some form of confrontation? Was the house significant in some way, a location where something had happened, something that drew these watchers repeatedly? Or was the explanation something more mundane, a property dispute, a family conflict, an inheritance battle? Perhaps the watchers believed they had some claim to the land or the house, and Thomas and Jennifer were trying to maintain possession through constant occupancy. I'll never know the truth. What I do know is that I was used as a pawn in someone else's dangerous game, placed at risk without full knowledge of what I was walking into. The couple's careful reassurances and downplaying of danger were manipulative tactics designed to keep me from asking too many questions or involving authorities. I stopped doing house sitting after that. The work that had once seemed like an easy way to earn money while enjoying temporary luxury now felt fraught with potential dangers. You never truly know what situation you're entering, what secrets the homeowners are keeping, what they're not telling you about why they really need someone to watch their house. Sometimes late at night, I still think about those figures standing silently in the field, watching and waiting. I think about the sound of footsteps on the roof, the emotionless faces of the men on the porch, the shapes moving in the darkness around the property. I think about how close I came to refusing to leave, to hiding in the house, to discovering what would have happened if I hadn't followed Thomas's instructions. And I think about what those people were doing inside that house after I drove away into the night.